I own the nexttonyrobbins.com.
The next.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, no
Yeah.
shit.
You can check it out. Oh, yeah. It sends you straight to my website. We're getting ready to start, and like, all right, there are people waiting outside, probably open the doors. And I'm not joking. 4 people came in. 196 empty seats. These 4 people sit down, and I go, wow, and I jump on and I start going into my speech like there's 1,000 people in this room. We can't judge ourselves with our eyes now, because here's the deal. If you look back at your former self and you're not a little embarrassed, it means you haven't grown as a person, right?
You wrote a freaking book. You give all the credit to the publisher. That catapults you into position to where someone is going to pay you to get up and motivate them. Who was that first person that gave you a shot?
Warning, may contain best-selling authors, enthusiasm, Elon Musk, pizza delivery, and/or peanuts. I am Woodstock.
Josh.
Jace.
How the hell do you get a #1 best-selling book?
Oh, it's way easier than you think. But no, let's start from the beginning. So I was in the corporate world, had a normal, regular job, had short hair. And I did that for 10 years. And during that time, one day I got into an argument with one of my, he was a technical sales guy, and I was in business development sales. And we went to this client's office, and I was so stoked because I took a small little opportunity of like $120,000. And like we had a conversation with this client and turned it into like a $2 million project, which I was stoked about. Because I mean, I was just seeing dollar signs, right? I'm a young sales guy, and I'm excited. We're walking out of this client's office, and I'm on cloud 9. And the guy I was working with, he goes, why did you tell them that we could do that? I go, what do you mean? We can, right? And he goes, well, yeah, we can, but it's going to be a lot of work. And I was like, but that's why we're getting paid, man. And so like that night, this is pre-kid. So that night, my wife was working late. And so I was a couple of scotches in with my dog. I was like, if you like your job, there's nothing better than that, right? And if you don't like it, you need to find something better. And so a couple of scotches in, I started venting in dictation mode to my iPad. And every night, like I would have some sort of weird interaction at work and be like, why aren't people more enthusiastic? Or why don't they care more about the work that they're doing? And so it just kept growing, right? It was me venting about terrible coworkers. And it grew to like 40 or 50,000 words. And it just sat there for like 2 years. And then by happen chance, I was eating lunch and I ran into an old boss, and she happened to be having lunch with a publisher. And she goes, oh, Josh, you should meet this publisher. I was like, oh, nice to meet you. And she, everybody has like their little 1 or 2 line quote that they say. And she goes, yeah, everybody's got a story they haven't written. And I was like, that's funny. I've written one. I've never published it. And she goes, I want to read the manuscript. And that's kind of where it started. And gave her the manuscript. She liked it. She's like, I want to publish this. I can make it a bestseller. And to be honest, it's not that the book or the content's that good. It's that she was really good at marketing. If I'm just going to be honest, right? You did like a podcast tour. I didn't even know you existed yet then, Jace.
I probably didn't even have a podcast at the time. What year was it?
This is 8 years ago.
Definitely not. Not.
Anyway, so and sure enough, they did this big marketing pushed it to a #1 bestseller in 2 different categories on Amazon. And I was like, you know what? This is what I want to do full time. So I gave my 2 weeks notice, and I said, I'm going to become a professional keynote and motivational speaker. And I had no idea how I was going to do that. But yeah, that's how it started. That's
insane to me, because we always talk about our buddy. It's like, hey, let's start a bar, but then no one does. And I didn't even know that you could get paid to just stand up in front of people. I mean, I've seen like Tony Robbins, and is that what's his name?
Yeah,
Tony Robbins.
That's the big dude,
guy with
Anthony.
the giant like banana hands.
Yeah, I own the nexttonyrobbins.com.
The next.
Oh yeah.
Oh no shit.
You can check it out. Oh yeah, it sends you straight to my website.
The nexttonyrobbins.com.
Oh yeah, it sends you straight to my website.
That's hilarious. So when you quit your job, did you say fuck you to anyone? No, we don't need to talk about that.
Yeah. See, straight to my website.
The nexttonyrobbins.com. Purpose drives people.
Agreed.
So what's your main thing? Because the book's called Enthusiastic
The first
You.
book. The first book is called. Yeah,
so there's a second book.
Yeah, we just finished writing it. I just had it edited. It's looking good. We just did finish the layout, and now we're set for a launch in the next few weeks. And I already got a pretty big pre-order, so I've got to get it out there. So
well, hopefully this can help.
Yeah,
all 2 of my listeners will probably buy that book.
Dude, if they contact you, they can probably find a couple of spare copies, because I'll leave a box here for everybody that comes on your podcast.
I'm sure that you'll have it on Amazon the same as you have the first one.
Yeah.
Okay.
It'll be the exact same.
So you did that not to be an author per se, but you use that as a catapult into what you want to do, which is talk to people, right?
Exactly. It's a piece of credibility. So having 10 years experience in the business world, that's a piece of credibility. Having studied communications, another piece of credibility. Having a best-selling book, another piece of credibility. And slowly but surely, as a speaker, I mean, you go from doing an event with like, a half dozen people in it to what Monday I had 2,000 people in an audience, and Cal Ripken Jr. opened for me. Which sounds so arrogant.
Telling me before we started,
but no, it was amazing. I was like a little child. I was like, Cal Ripken's here. He's speaking before me. It was amazing. It was a surreal experience, but a lot of fun. I love taking an audience because I walk on stage and they have no idea what they're going to get. Like they are clueless about the journey I'm about to take them on. Because I walk out and I take a paddle with me on stage, and people's like, "What is wrong with this guy?" It's like a lot, and you're about to get a lot of it. And so, it's making it an experience for everybody that's there. That's the biggest thing for me.
It's funny because I didn't know you did any of this before we'd met. So we met, mutual friends, hung out, and I said to one of my friends, that's probably one of the most enthusiastic guys I've ever met. And he starts laughing his ass off, me not knowing you had a book called Enthusiastic You. And so I bought it, and I'm reading through this book, and I'm like, dude, like, I can't even, it's hard to read this because it's just like, I know you already, and it's exactly just how you are. It's just, I can see you doing exactly what you're saying in that book. And that's when I'm like, okay, this guy's not full of shit. That's just how he is.
No, it is. And it's funny. We get chat about enthusiasm. It's an amazing thing. And to be honest, I think that it is misunderstood, because people think enthusiasm is like just being excited or being hyper. And that's not what it is at all. If you go back to the actual, we'll say the root definition it comes from the Greek enthusiasmos, right? Which means possessed by God, or doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing, meant for on this earth. That's what enthusiasm actually means. But it's gotten cheapened in recent years. And so like, oh yeah, he's just a little too enthusiastic. He's a little too possessed by God. Like, okay, hold on. That's crazy. Not that I'm saying I'm possessed by God by any means, but I feel a true connection and a passion behind everything that I do. And that's whether it's parenting, whether it's being a husband, whether it's, coming on this podcast. I was so excited. You guys, Sophia, I was up at like 5 this morning. It's like, when can we go get in the car? I'm doing a podcast, but I get excited about stuff. But we talked about this enthusiasm. It's a double-edged sword. There's a lot of people out there that aren't enthusiastic or that aren't passionate about things, and they see somebody that is, and they kind of make it a mission to try and make that person less passionate and less enthusiastic. And it's a shame that we can't support others in their natural bents, but I get it. I get it. It's hard to see somebody who has something we don't, whether it's a physical thing or a characteristic or a personality trait which we had. And it's easy to be jealous or vindictive towards people like that. But yeah, no, I love it. And I couldn't imagine being any other way.
It's interesting what you said about people trying to drag you down. It's really, I think that's why a lot of people, they have a negative outlook on life. I'm the perpetual optimist, and I think it's because every time I go to a new place that's not my comfort zone, and I mean, that's most of my life. I moved around before I left for high school. I think me and my family had moved 9+ times. So like, I was always the guy that was different. And I think every time I've gone somewhere, I find these amazing people. And so I just have this idea of what the world is, and it's full of good, nice, fun people, right? But you go online and there's a lot of people that don't see it that way. And I think that we're almost like brainwashed into thinking that if I don't drag them down, then they're going to take everything I have. And I feel it's the opposite way. It's kind of sad that some people see it that way. But with going back to enthusiasm, it's when you see someone that's enthusiastic and you push them away, you're just shooting yourself in the foot, because those are the type of people that, they're possessed by God. So you better want to hang out with them.
That's going to come back to haunt me again, isn't it?
No, I love that concept. Yeah. I love the concept that it's like the reason you're so excited about it, because that's what the word means now, right? Yeah. Most people hear it like, oh, he's really excited. He's got a lot of energy. And the whole possessed by God thing's like, oh, I'd be fucking pumped if God was telling me something to do. I knew what I was supposed to do. And talk about motivation. So I was telling you earlier, actually, that I was not a very enthusiastic person for a lot of my life. People would tell me stuff. I'm like, okay, cool. I don't know if you could call that stoic or asshole or what it is, but I had a point in my life where someone I looked up to, like you know me, I used to be part of the Mormon church. We went to Brazil, we did a mission, and one of the leaders in the mission, can't even remember his name, but I remember he smiled so much, and he was the most like excited, energetic person I've ever met. And I'm sitting there, and it's the beginning of my mission, and he's looking down on all of us young kids. He's been in Brazil for 2 years, so he's all like tan and sunburnt. And he says, "Guys, just don't forget to smile, because we're here to brighten people's lives." And I'm like, that is the cheesiest, corniest bullshit I've ever heard. But I'm like, oh, well, I've already drank the Kool-Aid. Might as well drink it some more. And I changed my outlook on, like, I always thought it was fake, right? Like, I saw enthusiasm. And maybe that's why people try to, like, bring you down when you're enthusiastic.
Or to test whether you're being authentic or not?
Yeah.
That's interesting. I was told, so my wife, her family's from Poland, and we go visit Poland, and I smile a lot. I'm a happy guy. And one of her cousins goes, Josh, you smile too much. I was like, what do you mean I smile too much? And he went on to tell me that, people that are smiling, at least because, a lot of them grew up under communism, right? Or the USSR.
Yeah.
That they were very leery of anybody that was smiling too much, because it mean that they were about to pull something over on you. I was like, so I'm just like, oh yeah, you come off as a scam artist in Poland, Josh. I was like, oh, well, sorry. Like, I can't change it. Like, look really stoic, right?
I've actually had I've had multiple people tell me that, like after we've become friends and they realize, hey, this guy's like for real. They said, Jace, honestly, I thought you were full of shit when I first met you. You're just too nice. I've never met anyone that was like that. And I didn't even register with me. It was Chuck. You know Chuck. He's like, no, I didn't trust you, man. I didn't trust you.
Dude, I grew up with Chuck. I love Chuck. And I watched him. He was your first episode.
Very first.
Yeah. And then he was also your 100th.
Back in the fire days.
The fireplace.
In a garage. With the door closed. I'm not a smart man.
Carbon monoxide poisoning. I mean,
hey,
and there wasn't even
fine.
A car involved.
We had the door cracked. We were fine. But so let's go through a little bit of your journey, because you wrote a freaking book. You give all the credit to the publisher. That catapults you into position to where someone is going to pay you to get up and motivate them. Who was that first person that gave you a shot?
Okay. The first person that gave me a shot. That's a good question, because I remember the first event that I actually did. And the guy's name was Gail Stolzenberg. Great guy. And he invited me to do the opening part and they had like a 3-hour workshop. He's like, Josh, you do the opening. I was like, great. So I showed up with them early, right? They had rented this place themselves. They had done all the marketing. So I was just excited to be there. And I think I was getting like a $20 gift card, right? But I bought like $15 worth of water on the way there, because they said, Josh, pick up some water bottles for the people that are attending. I was like, great. Oh yeah,
Gail Stolzenberg.
And I show up and we set the room up with like 200 seats in it, and we're getting ready to start, and like, all right, there are people waiting outside, probably open the doors, and I'm not joking, 4 people came in. Right, there's like now 196 empty seats. These 4 people sit down, and I go, wow, and I jump on and I start going into my speech like there's 1,000 people in this room, right? Because I don't have another mode, right? It's either all or nothing. And so I go, and then like I was probably like 6 or 7 minutes in, and one of the guys stands up and walks out.
No.
It was a humbling moment.
Yeah, how was that ego at the time?
My car also got broken into that afternoon.
No way.
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Well, and so I finished giving the speech, and I stayed for their stuff, right? We talked to the 3 people that I'm sure they were just too embarrassed to walk out. They probably wanted to. And we say our goodbyes, and I helped stack all the chairs back up. And then I walked downstairs, and the rear window of my FJ Cruiser had gotten smashed, but it was too small for them to actually pull anything through. So they literally just broke it and tried to pull out like this metal cart that I had back there. And they just ran off. It was ridiculous.
So They kicked you while you were down.
Well, they didn't know it was down.
Yeah.
They were just trying to get some free stuff. Good.
How did you like rebound from that? Because I know a lot of people, aka myself, that would probably just say, fuck it, I'm done.
Well, this is me working with another couple of people, right? Okay. And so what? I need to change some of the variables. So I thought, okay, they were the ones doing the marketing. They're the ones trying to get an audience. That's not how I want to be. How can I do it? I need to find somebody that already has an audience that can bring me in, not build an audience. And so I had an amazing mentor named Kent Julian. He's a phenomenal guy. He's a speaker. He speaks all over the country. He became a mentor and then a friend, but he ran this course called the Paid to Speak Conference. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go check this out. And it was like a few $100 in Atlanta. And it doesn't tell you how to give a good speech, but it laid out the business process to go and actually get business, right? The right people to reach out to, how often to market to them, what you need to say to them, the kind of things that they're looking for. So that's like all the preparation work, all the behind the scenes stuff they have to do before you get on stage to get hired. And it was an amazing course. And so I went through that course and it totally changed the way I approach my business. And so this is after that horrible debacle of, 3 people. But then from there, I started
at 4 though. That's not bad.
I started at 4. I lost 25% of the audience in the first 10 minutes. But yeah, no, it was amazing. So it was a really good process for me. And slowly I started marketing to the right people, and then they started hiring me. And you just start getting events. So the first few events, you show up, you don't know how big the audience is going to be. It might be 500 people, it might be 50 people, and I was always ready. And it was neat the first couple of years, just because you progress pretty quickly, right? You go from taking like a gift card of $50 to like, okay, here's $2,000. Like, oh, and here's $5,000. You're like, okay, my time's worth something now. Okay, I just need to get more hours on the stage. And so it just builds from there. And I think what's also interesting is all of my keynote speeches are all story based. And so I love telling stories. I mean, as you probably know, you've known me for some time now. I love telling stories, and I think people learn better through stories. But I have this, I'll say, a catalog of stories that in my satchel. And then when I have a conversation with an event planner, like, look, this is kind of what our audience needs. This is what we're looking for. I can kind of pick and choose which stories I want to use to land my point. And so in recent years, I've moved a little bit beyond enthusiasm, more towards purpose in the workplace. And it's just, I think it's so invaluable because it's a more tangible concept that hasn't been as bastardized as enthusiastic.
I mean, based off of what you were telling me earlier, it's kind of the same title,
it is,
but people understand what you actually mean by enthusiastic.
Well, exactly. And when I was first doing corporate gigs, companies won't buy enthusiasm for their employees, but you know what they will buy? Increased employee engagement. Fine. You just change the name of the talk. It's not called enthusiasm anymore. It's called, engaged employees. And it's finding that right vernacular that was used in the business environment that really helped me start gaining more traction.
Having learned a few different languages, took a little bit of, one course of linguistics in college. I'm no professional by any means, but as I educate myself throughout my life, and I'm not talking about, a formal education, but as I'm reading different books, as I'm talking to different people, as I'm trying new things, all these different forms of education, one thing that constantly just berates me is, God, our words are so important, because I've spoken to this person here on the West Coast and they feel a very strong, they feel a righteous, they feel enthusiastic, they feel God's telling them to like act a certain way. And then I'll talk to someone who's like middle of nowhere, New Mexico, for example, and they just are so opposite sides of the aisle. But when you get to know them, and more importantly, when you start understanding their culture and their like base values, you realize they're saying the same thing, but they're using different words. And so I love that you brought up that enthusiastic. What was it again? The actual definition?
Enthusiasmos. Yeah.
And it's Greek. The something of God. What was it?
Possessed by God.
Possessed by God.
Yeah. Look up enthusiasmos or enthusiasm. Greek.
Yeah, we could talk for hours and hours and hours and hours about religion. That's one thing that I used to dedicate a lot of my life to. Now I feel like I do, but it's the people that I used to hang around with would not think that the things that I'm doing now are religion or are reconnecting to God. And so being possessed by God, I think, is such a powerful statement. It's when you have those aha moments in life, you hear something and you're like, oh shit, that's going to change the rest of my life. That's what I think enthusiasm is. That's the possession of God that I think some people just choose not to act on because it's not the norm and they're, I guess, afraid.
Well, and it's not easy, right? And so, and I don't want people to make some sort of connection where I'm saying that I'm possessed by God. I do believe that I'm doing the work of, I do think, and this is a Descartes philosophical stance, I do believe that something has to come from something, right? And whatever you want to call that, right? I think God is the most common word for that. So that's what I'll call it. But I do think that we're possessed and put here for a reason. And if we're not seeking out that reason, then why are you going through the whole rigmarole?
And even if you don't have a predetermined reason, I think the actions or the outcome are the same. You can sit there and be a selfish prick, and maybe it is for nothing. Maybe there is a darkness at the end and there's no one actually counting on us. But if you have the opportunity to do some bad shit and to help some people and to like live life to the fullest, why wouldn't you? Regardless of whether there's a God, do what you think God wants you to do. And if your God's a dick, then stop following that God and get a new one.
Well, and even if we just we'll remove God from the conversation, right? Take somebody that is a prick, right? Like, if you're not trying to make an impact on this world, what on earth is the point? Like, if you don't have purpose or don't see it, what is the point? Go do something else, right? And I know I said that kind of tongue in cheek, but I think too many people allow themselves to be driven by the wrong things, right? And we've all been guilty of it, right? Driven by monetary ideas, right, or driven by societal expectations. But if we were to boil all that down, like, are you making the world a better place for other people or not? I think that's what we're all actually called to do.
Amen.
Well, you're doing it with this podcast. Amazing. Rachel's doing it by, fact checking me. And I haven't even used any facts yet, but she's about to start.
I mean, Treya not made me watch a movie last night, but she threw it on and I happened to start watching it. And it was a roller coaster. It was insane, but what was the name of it? It's escaping me. It's
Little Mermaid?
It's brand new. It got raving reviews in Cannes Film Festival. Poor Things. And if you check it out, I'm not going to send any spoilers. It is not for the faint of heart. If you think that nudity and what's her name? Gosh, I feel so bad that I don't. Emma Stone, super famous actress. I don't know her name, but Emma Stone, Willem Dafoe, Mark Ruffalo. It's a fantastic show, but it's about what we're talking about. It's about not going by the norms, but to the fucking extreme. So if you haven't watched it,
it's real weird. Huh?
You don't watch it with kids, dear Lord. Don't watch it with someone who finds, if you think me saying the F word is offensive, this is not going to be your show. But in such a huge hyperbolic way, which I respect, it really shoved in the face of right and wrong and talking about how society, we all have to live together with certain rules, but some of them are kind of like, well, why do we? Why do we follow these set of rules when all that really matters is making life better for people around you? Yet we let the rules of society get in our way just because that's how it's always been.
What do they say, that rules are there for the guidance of the intellectuals and the strict adherence of the fools, or something like that?
I love that. That's great.
No, I butchered it. You could probably find the right one, but no, it's true though. I think that we have to set standards, right? As a society, as humans, as individuals, we have to set standards because there's people that will push boundaries beyond what is probably acceptable. But I think the more we're willing to try and understand others' perspectives, trying to actually look into other people's motivations behind their efforts, I think that's the first way that, instead of, because we're in a great time of division, right? We know this, right? As a country, as individuals, politically, in all sorts, in all fashions, there are people that are going to disagree with anything somebody says. Why are we working towards being more divisive? Why? It's not serving a purpose, right? It's not helping other people. Oh, there it is. Rules are for the obedience of fools and the guidance of wise men. I was close.
Nailed it.
I give it a 6 out of 10. But yeah, so I just think there are people out there that are only in it for themselves. Then again, I know people out there that look like they're in it for themselves, but I know in their heart they're actually in it because they see a value to society and to the people that they know and to their friends. And I think that it's not always easy to make those distinctions.
That's
right?
very, very insightful. I think we have that, and it's on a spectrum too, right? The man of the hour these late years of whether you like him or not is Elon Musk. And you have this huge spectrum of whether it's just pure vitriol hate or they just think he's the next messiah, right? Most of us kind of fall in between. But I think the people who support him, they don't support everything he does. They don't support everything he says. And I don't think you should for any human being. But the ones that do support him, and I would put myself in this camp, is I think that his intentions are
righteous,
pushing towards something that he feels is going to make the world a better place. And the haters, they're like, bullshit, he's just in it for money, right? And so that's the big difference is like, do you think that he is acting with SpaceX, with Tesla, with all the companies that he's running? Twitter's like the big hot one because depending on whether bleed blue or red, you either love or hate that decision. But if you take him for his word, and I choose to do that with everyone regardless. And until I meet the man and can determine for myself that he is out for himself and an asshole, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. And he constantly talks about why he's doing SpaceX, Starlink to be the first thing, then Starship potentially getting off this rock. And some people don't see or maybe don't agree with the reasoning he does, but at least he practices what he preaches, right? And that, I think, hypocrisy in my mind is one of the worst sins that you can do.
Yeah. Oh man, there's a lot to unpack there. I think Elon believes in what he's doing. I think he is doing some pretty amazing things. You can't question it, right? The new Cybertruck, it's so sick, right? All right, I get it. He's doing some really cool stuff that had never been done before. Like, okay, the video when they have that friggin' 911 up against the Cybertruck and they race it, and you're like, oh my goodness, I can't believe an electric truck that weighs 7,000 pounds is beating a 911. And then as they cross the finish line, it pans out and like, oh, and the Cybertruck's pulling a 911 on a trailer. Well, it beat it under its own power with an extra one.
Did you hear all the conspiracy theories behind that one? It's not a conspiracy theory, but it was a marketing stunt, right? So Tesla didn't have to, but they made it seem as if that was a full quarter mile. Well, it wasn't. So when they panned out and they showed him go across the line, that wasn't the full quarter mile, right? And so they didn't say it in writing that it was, but Elon Musk, I think, was under the impression it was. So he said during the release event, yeah, it can beat it in a quarter mile while pulling another Porsche, which even if it wasn't a quarter mile, even if it was like, I think it was an eighth mile.
0 to 60 in 2.6 seconds. It's a truck, dude.
It's insane.
It's a truck.
Yeah, you have all these haters like, well, they lied to us again. I'm like, wait, you have a engineering marvel that is the Cybertruck. Tell me you don't know about the engineering of the Cybertruck without telling me. The second you're like, well, they did technically wasn't a quarter mile. I'm like, bro, come on. Give credit where credit's due.
All right, and so we can all say Porsche's made some amazing strides, okay?
Absolutely.
So I love Porsches. So my replica 55 Spider does 0 to 60 in 5.6 seconds.
That's really fast.
It's not that fast. It weighs 1,200 pounds. It weighs nothing, right? It's all.
I remember when the Dodge Viper was one of the faster cars, and it was just barely under 6 seconds.
Yeah,
but that was years and years and years ago. As far as a stock model.
Yeah, 2.6 seconds is insane. It's a truck.
I can't even imagine.
It's a truck. Imagine how fast you can get to Home Depot. Like, it's unreal, man. Unreal.
Well, I was one of the early adopters. I think it was a few hours after I watched the Cybertruck event, and there was that fiasco that the glass broke. It was a terrible, terrible production of like announcing it. But... And I even hated the look of it. When it rolled out, I was excited. I was like kind of fanboying a little bit. I wasn't a fan of Tesla. I wasn't a fan of Elon Musk, but I kind of liked the idea of it, right? I did not like what it looked like, and I was let down. I watched the whole event. I'm like, man, I don't know. Then I started reading all the specifications. And I'm like, holy shit, you're going to be able to get that for, at the time, it was supposed to be $39,000. But
it was 3 times that now.
Yeah, that's another complaint that some people have had. But I thought, holy crap, like, I might as well, like, what's $100? Like, I think right off the bat, you could put $100 down and you'd like hold your slot. That's when I like first did an investment ever. And I'm like, you know what? Tesla stock went down, I think 7% that day. I'm like, at least I have this $100. Let me see if I can make 7% on it. I'd never traded before. And the rest is history. I think from the time that I purchased that stock to now, I don't know how many times it's split, and I think 2 splits, and it's, I don't know, 10x or whatever. But the Cybertruck itself, now 4 years later, and this, how did this podcast turn into a Cybertruck podcast?
I don't know, but I'm on board.
I love it. I'm excited because I hopefully will take receipt of one fairly soon. I've had a reservation for a while, and I can't afford it, with the $0 I make on my podcast. But I think someone would love to rent that thing someday, so I'll probably use it for marketing.
Dude, after this podcast, I'm sure sponsors will be rolling in. Like, you got Josh Evans, the guy that
Elon's
spoke
calling.
at 3
Hold
people.
on 1 second. Yep. Wait, you're the next Tony Robbins.
The next. Yeah, that's what the website says.
But how do we get on this? We're talking about people, how we...
No, but he actually cares about what he's doing.
Yeah.
He sees a deep purpose behind his efforts, right? And that is, he's thinking in much bigger terms than us, right? Knowing that we do, as a species, being a single planetary species, we're screwed, right? Like, if something happens, like, all it takes is one little asteroid, and
which
it's
we have
over.
Evidence has happened multiple times over the last million years. We've had
dude, I've gotten sucked into the Younger Dryas. Oh man,
gosh,
I love it.
Yeah,
but I'm not going too deep into that. No, for sure. And so he's thinking much bigger, global challenges, right? And everybody else that I think is hating is thinking on a very micro level and not nearly as macro. And to be honest, I mean, half of his ideas are way beyond the scope of things that I could probably comprehend. However, I understand that, I mean, he's running at so many more revolutions, so many more cycles than I am, that he's already worked out all the problems and nuances. He's like, no, guys, just trust me, right? We're going to Mars. Let's go. And we kind of, at some point, you got to just admit, okay, he's probably quite a bit smarter than me. I should probably just listen to him, right?
I would push back
Steve
on
Jobs
that.
at every meeting he had. He total asshole, right? He was a terrible boss, terrible manager, but he got shit done because he set a vision. He goes, no, I've seen it. We can do this. Go do it. And if you can't, I'll find somebody that will. And that's, I wouldn't call it motivating, but he saw that bigger purpose behind it.
I think it's important to a point, trust to a point. So even when I said earlier, I'm going to choose to believe that they're not full of shit, we also have to pick and choose what we follow, because the blanket following of any leader, regardless of how amazing they've been up to a point, that has what led
at least some really bad things. Not
even countries, entire world down a dark path, right? And so, what was that Abraham Lincoln quote? And maybe Ray can get this, but it's an Abraham Lincoln. It's I stick with my friends while they're right, and when they stop being right, I part ways. Again, I butchered that one as well, but it's
probably another 6 out of 10. That's close.
Yeah, I'll give it a 5. But did you find it already? Dang, Abraham Lincoln. Wait, where is
I
it?
destroy my enemies while making friends. That's that. Never mind. That's like a 2.
I don't think that's the right one. Although, again, I don't even know if Abraham Lincoln said that. I saw a quote written on the back of a Bible that my dad handed to me. So I trust that it was someone smart that wrote it. At worst, it was my dad, who I highly respect. But where is it? That's another good one. Am I not destroying my enemies when I make friends of them? Wow, that's said really weird. But yeah, that's a good one. I think a little different sentiment, but I think it's important to, and I said this when I first brought up Musk, there are things that, he's going to say that are wrong. There's things he's going to say that are ridiculous.
He said it beat the 9/11 in a quarter mile. Apparently, that's a lie. I got to question everything he says. We're not going to Mars. We're going to Venus.
If I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt, he honestly thought it was, and his PR team, gave him the wrong information. I don't know. I'm not going to make excuses for the guy, or maybe he knew and he was flat out lying. Regardless, it doesn't change how badass the Cybertruck is. Yes, it looks like a futuristic doorstop, but I'm not buying it for its looks.
It's got like class 3 HVAC. It's bulletproof. Like, what do you want? Like, you go to Chicago in that car. I wouldn't go to Chicago in any car.
I'm like, go to Chicago.
I'm kidding.
It doesn't have nearly enough mileage on it.
Chicago.
From here to Chicago, it'd probably take 4 weeks just because all the charging. But again, that's also
I
not
hear
why
the
I'm
west to
getting
east charging is easier than the north to south charging.
Well, we're still at the like early ages of the infrastructure. The reason Tesla is just blowing everyone else out of the water is because the foresight of Elon Musk, like creating a network. Now everyone has jumped on board to their actual chargers. They've opened up the infrastructure. It's only going to help grow it even more. Like, what did Musk say? They could give the cars away for free, an investor would still be making money because of all of the auxiliary items that are part of the Tesla infrastructure. So there's a lot
I'd take a free Tesla.
Elon, if you're watching this,
there's no way.
Of course he does. He probably listens to it on 6x speed just to get through it, but he probably listens to all the IaM Woodstocks. I'd be shocked. Who wouldn't? Obviously,
I've skipped a few of them.
I've skipped a few of them. But the whole point of all of this is try to be a good person.
Yeah.
I think if you
it's okay to be mission driven, but don't do it. Don't do it in a way that detracts from others, right? Like, do it in a way that is serving others, right? Whether it's a big, huge idea like serving all of humanity or serving this one person. I want to back it out for a second. So I think as individuals, we're really good about talking about what our role is, right? It's the title we give ourselves, and it's the title in anything, right? The role of father, the role of husband, the role of friend, the role of employee, the role of contractor, whatever it is. We know what our role is in most given situations. We also know what somebody in that role does. It's the list of tasks or functions or responsibilities, the KPIs for that role, right? So my KPIs for, as a dad is I have to make sure, dinner's ready. I have to make sure the kids get bathed. I have to tell them stories. Like those are the things that I need to do in that role. We're comfortable in those things, right? And what our role is and what our role does. What a lot of times a lot of people fail to recognize is the deeper piece of it, right? Because I would call that the shallow end of the pool. Is and does is the shallow end of the pool. What we're missing, right, is remembering what doing a great job in every single role, what it means to everyone that depends on you. And so I was breaking it down the other day. I was thinking about like a pizza delivery driver, like what deep purpose they have to have. Like if they really back out and like think about it, and I'll give you how I got to this in a second. But if you take a pizza delivery driver, he's not delivering pizzas, okay? Take the standard average pizza delivery guy, gets the order, he has his stack of pizzas, he goes takes these pizzas to the house. He knows what his job is. It is pizza delivery driver. He knows what somebody in that role does. I grab the pizzas from the oven or from the the stack of other pizzas. I put them in my car. I drive to a house and I drop them off. But does he know what doing a great job means to all those that depend on him? Probably not. But if he was to actually think about it, like, no, what he's actually providing this family is peace of mind. Follow me. Peace of mind that they don't have to worry about getting dinner prepared. That they can spend their time doing stuff that they want to do, whether it's playing games with their kids or helping them with their homework or working in the garden, whatever it might, heck, watching TV, if that's what actually, brings you satisfaction in your life. But what that pizza delivery driver is actually providing is peace of mind. So tip your pizza delivery drivers.
Amen.
But it applies to everything. It applies to everything.
It does. It does.
Now, the way that I got there, I was in Tucson, Arizona for an event. All right. And I had to fly to New York City I had a 6 a.m. flight because I had to speak in New York the next day. So in Tucson, I had to set my alarm to wake up at 3:30, and I had to have an Uber pick me up at 4 a.m. And so I scheduled an Uber the night before, and I'm sitting there waiting for this Uber to arrive. And I did my research because I got in the wrong car one time. And so I know her name's Gabriella, and she's a small tan sedan. And it pulls this car, and she rolls her window down, and we do that little dance that you do with an Uber driver where she's like, "Are you Joshua?" And I was like, "Are you Gabriella?" And she's like, "Yeah." She goes, "Get in." And I go, "Can I sit in the front?" I know, it's weird, right? So I get in the front seat and off we whisk towards the airport. And we know that like Uber drivers, it's the side hustle, right? Anybody that's driving for an Uber, they're doing it as a way to get money to pay for some sort of passion project, right? Or some sort of, trip that they're trying to go on, whatever it might be. And so I don't care about driving for Uber. I want to know what they do when they're not at Uber. So I'm sitting there and I go, Gabriella, what do you do when you're not driving for Uber? She goes, well, I manage an upscale restaurant here in the Tucson area. I was like, wow, that must be so fulfilling. And she goes, nope.
Just immediately, nope.
Yeah, nope. I was like, that just she ruined my line of questioning, right? And that's usually how I start with Uber drivers. So like I'm looking down, like dejected, and I'm like looking at my lap, and she must have known something was up, because then she goes, no, actually, Josh, what I'm actually passionate about is driving for Uber.
Really?
Who the hell says that, right? Like I've heard lots of things, right? I've heard, I like the flexibility. I love the hours. The pay is good. I've heard, sir, don't throw up in the back. I've heard lots of things from Uber drivers, but what I haven't heard is an Uber driver say, I'm passionate about driving for Uber. And so like I dug in, and turns out this woman, she only works from midnight to 6 a.m. because she thinks that's when people need help getting home the most. And
wow.
So she would it gets crazy, right? So she would go down to like the bar district near the university in Tucson, and she would give people free rides home if she saw that like they seemed impaired. She wanted to just make sure they got home safely. And I was like, okay. Like,
is she for real?
No, for real. And like we've heard people like, oh, I would do my job even if it didn't pay me. Great. This one's actually doing that. And I found out why. Because I dug, I was like, I have to know why. Like, what set you on this mission? And she goes, well, a few years ago, my sister died in a drunk driving accident. And I don't want anybody to go through that same pain. And it blew my mind, because she's doing the exact same job as every other Uber driver out there, right? They know what their job is. It is Uber driver, right? It's a cab service. We know what somebody in that role does. You accept a fare, you pick up the fare, you drop off the fare. What every other Uber driver I've ever met is missing out on is that next piece. You don't have to have a tragedy to realize that you're helping an individual get somewhere safely. That you're once again providing peace of mind to another human being. That's where the real rubber meets the road. And that's why people should care about what they're doing.
And that's a gift. If you have that mentality, then literally what can you not do and love your life? Like how many people that are listening to this, they don't like their job, or they have something else they want to do, and if there's a reason keeping them from it or not, we have every opportunity to be happy, be excited, and be able to make our lives and the lives around us better, and we just choose to dwell on the shitty part.
Right on the nose. Exactly. We have a choice. We can direct our perceptions. Like we get to choose how we show up to the world, right? So there's a really fascinating guy, his name is Dr. Acker. But he surmised, and he did this study at Harvard University, and he found that people with a positive brain are 19% more accurate. They're 31% more productive. They're 3 times more creative and 10 times more engaged than pessimistic people. And these aren't people that are just happy no matter what, not like psychopaths, but like people who are looking for solutions instead of looking at the problems. And so his whole thing about our perspective is that it's not the world that shapes your reality, but the lens with which you view the world that shapes your reality. In other words, we're all looking at the world through our own lenses, and we get to ask ourselves on a daily basis, are our lenses making the world a brighter place or a darker place? And too many people choose darker place.
I don't want to lose this thought. Your lens comment, I think, nails it on the head, because one thing that drastically changed my viewpoint of this world was a conversation I had with a gentleman. You had mentioned someone that I think they had cancer, and they were like talking about mindfulness. And I'd love to hear some more of that, but it reminded me of a gentleman I met. I had just got done talking to, she is a psychedelic, oh gosh, I'm blanking right now, an integrator. So she helps people who feel they need to do psychedelics learn about the process and learn to do it responsibly and respectfully.
Nice.
Right. And she got into that because she had a history with abuse. She was able to work through the process of the, AA, the 10-step program. And she found out that psychedelics were a big part of that. Now, bringing it back to your lens comment, she had introduced me to a gentleman that she's like, you got to talk to this guy. He originally was really successful in this, I believe he was in the stock market, found out he had a brain issue and decided to dedicate his life instead to, all right, how can I help myself in this situation? Instead of just hanging up the cleats and giving up, he's like, how do I selfishly, extend my life selfishly, like you're selfish, you want to try to live, but it got him into the psychedelic realm. He started researching in it, and it completely changed his view on life. And the thing that he said to me that I've mentioned on this podcast multiple times, but it's true, is we have this lens that we're not born with, but through our formative years, we create a perspective of how we see this life. And that's set in stone. And we see through different lenses, and some people, like Julian, a guest I had on, he grew up in the south side of San Antonio where drive-bys were a common thing. There's other people who were raised, where I was, with a mother and a father, and there were 8 kids in the family, and we didn't have a lot of money, but we got by. And there's other people who have a lot more. And each one of our experiences is going to shape that lens. And it's not our fault what our lens is, but it is our fault if we don't try to change it. And the thing that this gentleman said, and I'm going all about to get to this point, is he talked about our default mode network. And that's the concept that our neurons are firing constantly. And these brains, this gray matter up in our head, is just drilling these pathways into our head. And that's why we feel, well, this is the way the world is. That guy's crazy. And he said, whether it's through mindfulness, whether it's through psychedelics, and there's other forms as well, you're able to actually, and he gave me the imagery of taking off a backpack of these things you've been carrying your entire life. And that's your default mode. That's the lens that you see this world through. And he says, when you get to that place, regardless of how you get there, you're able to look inside that backpack, recognize, oh, here's the weight that I've been carrying my whole life. And even to the point where you can choose, you know what, this one's been helpful, I'm going to hold on to it. This one, fuck you, get the fuck out of my life, toss it on, or at least maybe minimize the weight of it. Mm-hmm. And that blew me away. I'd never viewed the world in that light before. And I've since come across other great thinkers who have said similar things. And lots of them actually tied to psychedelics, others meditation, others, some people call it mindfulness.
Yeah. And I love that, because I think anything that helps us take that introspective journey, right? And I meditate daily. Every single day I meditate, and I love it, right? And it's part of a routine that I do. But what I don't do is take psychedelics daily. But then again, I have obligations, so that would be a terrible idea. But no, I think anything that helps us step outside of the pickle jar and be able to read the label of the jar that we're in, like, oh, and then you and I love the analogy, right, of the backpack. And like, you get to choose what things you're carrying on a day-to-day basis in your backpack, right? And here's the deal. Like, I can still recall very vividly some painful experiences, some harmful, hurtful things that I've done to people, that I've had done to me. And I try to leave the ones that aren't helping me be a better person behind, but the ones that I see as, okay, this is an example of how I need to change, or how I need to adjust myself, or how I need to carry myself, or this is an example of empathy that was bestowed upon me that I need to carry. So it may still be something hurtful, but knowing that it's going to make me a better person, you choose to carry those items, right? Because I mean, heck, maybe sometimes I'm carrying them out of because it's comfortable to hold on to them, right? But I think too often we carry too much, right? And we let all of the burdens of our past just ride along like a semi truck behind us. And we don't need that. I'm not saying forget everything, right, and not be accountable or responsible, but I think carrying that emotional baggage is detrimental, because you can release it and you can choose to go do better things now. You can choose the new lens, right, that you get to go view the world. I love that.
You brought up 2 different things. One, things that people have done to you, things that you've done to others. And I that second one, I think, is the thing that always holds me down. And I think you just enlightened me a little bit, because I fear, or I know, like I recognize now that I think the reason I do hold on to those things more than I would the things that people did to me, it's it's easy to, not easy, but in my eyes, I feel like I need to hold myself accountable. I don't want to forget that and do it again. If I hurt someone, I want to make sure I'd never do that again. And so many times in my life, as you allow yourself to open your mind and see other people's perspectives, all of a sudden you look back on things that you did and at the time you thought was inert or even a good positive thing, and you realize, oh no, I actually was really fucking up at that time. And I think those are the things that wear on me, because I have this yearning to go back and speak to those people and beg them for forgiveness of like, I didn't know what I was doing at the time. I'm so sorry, but I can't. I'll never see those people again. Some of them, they'll never want to see me. Yeah.
You can never step in the same river twice.
But going back to your comment of, should you remove that from your backpack? I think you can, and still be cognizant of, I think it's a whole forgive and forget thing. Like, you're never going to forget that, but why carry the weight if it's only hobbling you from being a better person in the future?
Well, and I think you actually touched on another, I'll even call it like a subdivision of this sort of a conversation. So I come from a Catholic background, right? So I'm very comfortable with guilt, and that's what I carry around in my backpack. But no, and I found it. So some of these things that I would label in my mind as lessons that I need to learn from, and I need to make sure that I don't, go back and act these ways or do these things or whatever it might be. I realized after a while that, I was not holding on to it because it was making me a better person. I was holding on to some of these things because I felt like I needed to, maybe as a penance for the wrongs of the past. And we can't judge ourselves with our eyes now. Because here's the deal. If you look back at your former self and you're not a little embarrassed, it means you haven't grown as a person, right? And so a lot of these situations I've realized, okay, I was holding on to that for the wrong reasons. Not because it's serving me to be a better person, but because I was punishing myself for something that I may have done. And I think the more we can release ourselves from those sorts of things and those entanglements, right, psychologically, the more easily we can release others from theirs as well. We can forgive a lot more readily once we forgive ourselves, don't you think?
Absolutely. And full circle, if we're trying to make this world a better place, I think that's where everyone has to start. I don't think there's one thing we can ever focus on, but one thing that I think translates regardless of where you are, what lens you grew up with, recognizing a better way to do it each day and not letting the past weigh you down, and actually use your energy towards doing good. Doesn't matter where you start, it's where you're going in that aspect.
I used to spend a lot of time in Canada. So back when I was in oil and gas, right? I used to spend like a week every month there for like almost 4 years in Calgary.
What did you do in O&G?
I did sales, software sales.
Okay.
Yeah. It was a lot of fun.
It
was during those years that I wrote that book.
Oh, that was the job you had that was like...
Yeah, I started writing that book, yeah.
Yep. You're like, nope, not for me.
Oh, it's funny. The book's green, and their logo, the company that I was with at the time, was green. I think that
Caltech?
No, much smaller.
Not Caltech. That's Calfrac. That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah, no, smaller. They got picked up by a big boy, though. That's after I left. But no, it was wild. And so, I love Calgary. I love Canadians, at least while I was up there. But I found out when they say sorry, half the time it's because it's like ingrained that they have to say that, and the other half the time what they really mean is fuck you.
Hey,
and no, I'm serious.
I'm like, sorry, no.
No, it's if you watch next time if you're around several Canadians and they're holding the door and like they see you coming, like sorry, and you're like, oh, that was the fuck.
That was the other one. Yeah.
Sorry, I can cuss on here, right? I don't think my kids can hear me.
I don't think I mind.
Good.
No, I'm one of those guys that my sister talks about. And everyone's heard this phrase. They say profanity's the sign of an unintelligent person, or if you don't have a good vocabulary, then you're going to fall back on profanity. Okay,
I want you to pull these stats up because the opposite is true.
I really think it is.
So today in the car, my oldest, Luke, who's 9.5, he'll proudly tell you, he got very frustrated. And he goes, Daddy, can I say a bad word? Not right now. Not in front of the little ones, but later. But at least he has the wherewithal because he would have dropped the F-bomb. I know. Like he doesn't half-ass, and he'd go full tilt. In fact, we were in Poland one time, and he was 3, and he had just started saying the word yes. Okay, I was amazed, like getting on the flight, and he said yes for the first time. It was unbelievable for us. So we're stoked. We show up. We're hanging out in Poland with my mother-in-law, and we're at this beautiful square, in Europe, and we're sitting there having like an afternoon coffee and a beer. And Luke gets up from the table and he like hits his head on the marble and he goes, "Fuck." At 3 years old, and like this is like within a week of when he first said yes.
He's learning.
And my mother-in-law looks at me and I go, what does that mean in Polish? She goes, "That's not a Polish word." And my only retort was, well, at least he used it in the right context, right? Because,
Yeah, I mean, I don't even say bad words around, like I don't deem them bad around my kids. And I had this moment where, I was raising my oldest. I was about to say, "Hey, that's a bad word. Don't say that." We were decorating our Christmas tree and we took a step back, and she's probably like 5 years old, and she kind of crosses her arm and like puts her hip out all like adult like, and she goes, "That's going to look so damn good." And me and Treya, we die laughing because that's hilarious. And I was about to say, "Hey, that's a bad word." And at that moment, I'm like, fuck that. That's not a bad word. I mean,
no, it's emphatic.
We laughed. That's a great word. And so I sat there for a while, and I was probably stoned. I don't know. I sat and thought of it too long. I'm like, what? If it's not a bad word, what is it? Like, how can I teach my daughter right now to something that's not gonna, I'm not bullshitting her just because that's what I was taught. Like, what is that word? And what I came down to and what I told her was that's a powerful word. That's an adult word. That's a word that
there's times it's appropriate.
Exactly.
Times it's not. I think that's a much better way.
And I said, there are places you can't say that. Like if you go to school, are you allowed to say that word? She's like, "No." "Why?" And she's like, "I don't know. They just say I can't." And then I asked myself, I'm like, well, yeah, why can't she say that at school? I'm like, well, it's because she's going to have kids in her class who are raised with a different lens, and their lens is not wrong, but we need to respect their lens as much as we can. Mm-hmm. And I that's one of the things that I mess up a lot, or I should say, given the context of the conversation, I fuck up a lot as a parent. But that's one of the things that every time I say it, it rings true. We shouldn't teach our kids that's a bad word. It's hey, when should we use that word? When is the appropriate time to use that word? I'm not going to teach kids that alcohol is bad. I'm going to teach them, hey, when is an appropriate time to drink alcohol?
Yes, only on the podcast.
During a podcast.
Yeah. No, I think this is great. And I mean, this brings me to, we have a couple that we're friends with, and they had kids earlier than we did. And the mom will listen to whatever song she wants, with whatever language. And I know other friends like, "No, we would never do that." So they're just listening to like the Peppa Pig soundtrack and crap in their car. And I was like, no, but here's the deal. And I take John Denver's perspective on this. John Denver was totally opposed to putting that label, that little sticker that said parental advisory on music. He's like, "No, you cannot do this." It was him up there with like NWA and Eazy-E, like at a congressional hearing saying, "You cannot do this. You're censoring music. You are changing it." No, these are pieces of art, and you're trying to change people's perspective before they've even seen the art. This is unacceptable. Wow. He's like, you don't have warning labels on like, the Venus de Milo or on David. Why are you trying to limit this perspective on art? And I totally agree with him. Like, you know what? The artist, mind you, there are some songs that are really that are profane. Okay, cool. I'm not really going to want my kids to listen to that. But there's some songs out there where there is foul language, and it's okay because the artist meant it. Like that person, they were intoning some emotional thing to the audience, and I'd rather my kids appreciate it, even respect it, not necessarily repeat it, but understand like it's okay to feel that word. Heck, it's okay to use that word with the right company. Luckily, I can say like, not around your little daughter, not around my little daughter. Now, your sister, don't say these bad words around her, but like they have a song right now that they love to listen to, and it's It's got really, really big F-bombs in it, like heavy metal, like, and it's really funny to me because they love the song. Yeah. And like they'll go over to Alexa and be like, Alexa, play this song. And I was like, no, your sister's home. Turn that off. Mommy does not want to hear that. Yeah, there he is right there.
John Denver's full of shit.
Mr. Sunshine.
That's
on
not
my
me.
shoulder.
That's Dumb and Dumber quote. You got to throw in a dumb movie quote at least once an episode. I had an episode with Amanda. Amanda Ending is one of the better people I know just in general. And I had a few people request me to get her on to talk about being a mother. And we talked about, our different ways of doing things. And for the most part, we saw eye to eye. But I think you can relate coming from a Catholic religion, me being Mormon, anyone that has a strict, hey, this is right, and that a black and white mentality, you do have the danger of creating an environment where there's stigmas involved, the guilt that you talked about. And I think that's just weight. And, going back to the backpack, it's that's only weight. It's not teaching us anything.
Well, and even worse of that, what you're now doing is you're introducing the idea of shame to your child. I don't want my children to be ashamed about anything, right? If anything, I mean, we understand what parameters are, what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, great. But the second you say this is wrong all the time, never do this, and then they were to go out and like say my parents are really, don't ever drink, right? Don't ever have a drink. Don't ever drink and drive. Don't do any of those things. And then in high school, you go out and you slam a couple of Busch Lights, right? Or what are they? Natty Ice, right? You slam a couple of those.
MD 4040s.
Oh, God help us. Yeah. But no, you slam one of those, and then like now you created this situation where I can't tell my parents because I've done something that's horrible. Now I feel that feeling of shame, and that's just killed a channel of communication with the parents, right? So the second, no, I'd rather you can tell me anything you want. Something bad happened, you did something bad, you can tell me anything. As long as you're being honest with me, I will be so appreciative. And that it's hard, right? It's hard.
That's one of the big topics we hit on was, and we were talking more about screen time, but it goes into drug use, alcohol use, promiscuity. I don't even like that word, promiscuous. Anyways, it's the idea that, I think you said it great. You're closing that channel of communication. Communication is something that sets us aside from most other organisms. Yeah, they communicate, but not to the even nth degree of how humans communicate. Like, we have Starlink. We can be on the top of a mountain and be able to have a video conference with someone on top of a different mountain. And we have to realize that if we are shutting down lines of communication for our children, then we are doing them a disservice.
Well, where are they going to go to have these conversations then?
Exactly.
The people that may not have their best interests at heart.
And I'm going to step on some toes now, but I think this is why it's so fucking ridiculous when we have people saying, I'm going to pull my kid out of school because I don't want them to teach, learn, I don't know, dinosaurs. They're teaching about evolution. They're teaching about God, whatever it is. They're like, I'm so mad that they're teaching my kids this. And I'm like, well, what about all the other education they're getting outside of school? Are you just going to let them are you going to walk that, or are you follow them around at like birthday parties and be like, don't talk to that kid, right? His parents are creationists, or so it's like you're not going to keep them from knowledge. That's impossible these days. So maybe as a parent, instead of limiting what our kids are experiencing, we talk to them about it.
We give them the tools to be able to decipher what's going on.
Exactly. It's the opposite effect. If we start taking things away from people, guess what every kid wants? Whatever they can't have. Guess what? Absolutely. Jace wants? Whatever I can't have. But I've learned through the years, it's like if I have a hard time putting down like sugar, for example, keeping sugar in the pantry helps me not do it because it's there, it's accessible, and I'm not searching it out. It's hard, but it's self-discipline. It's a skill you have to learn. But it's like with our kids, I have to sit there and I'm like, okay, I think processed carbohydrates are what's killing our nation, and I don't want my kids to be a part of that. So should I just not have it in the house? Well, no, we do. And I let my kids have it, but I'm constantly telling them, hey, do you understand how much you're actually supposed to have? And hope that they listen. Hope they
and I'm on the bandwagon too, right? I'm like, guys, stop eating cereal in the morning. This stuff's bad for you, right? We're doing eggs and bacon for the next few weeks. Like, we do it, right? And then, like, we got on the road to come here, and I was like, my kids are losing it in the car. I was like, there's a Little Caesars. It's hot. It's ready. It'll keep me steady on the road, right? Get the fed. But you do what you have to do in the moments. But no, I'm huge on food and where it comes from. And so I got a good cousin. He runs a farm, and so I buy a crap tons of meat from him and eggs, and he won't let me pay for the eggs and he won't let me pay for the vegetables, but we go out there, like, I mean, I had like, this is probably a low estimate of like 45-50 pounds of radishes. They're so good. They're huge. They're bigger than my fist and like white. You could shave them real thin. They're so good.
You ate 40 pounds of radishes?
Well, I shared them. I shared some with my brother-in-law and then with my mother-in-law, but they're so, oh yeah, my kids were eating them like apples. It was crazy. They're so good. But like, yeah, that and kale and carrots and tomatoes and all this stuff.
How do you get your kids to eat radishes? I can't get my kids to eat.
I got a garden. Well, they're emotionally invested in our garden too, because like they plant it, they water it. Yeah, and it's been since they were kids, right? And so they each get to pick a few different things. And I was like, all right, make sure you get some jalapenos for daddy. And so
the whole lead by example thing is real, huh? I just need to get a garden, apparently.
Dude, I love my garden. So I planted a super late garden. Like after our last freeze, it was like, or before the freeze, I think it was like, I want to say like early January. I'm losing myself. I don't remember, but I planted a bunch of lettuce, and so for like 3 or 4 weeks, I had like new lettuce coming in, and I was making like multiple salads a week off this lettuce. It was awesome. And then it all died in the freeze. It was fine. It cost me like $3 to buy the little plant. It made me lots of salads.
Yeah, I have never had a green thumb. I don't think I've ever even tried to do a garden. I built a garden bed once, but then we immediately moved out. So I never even got to plant a single thing in it. I just broke my back doing it. But that's something that I'd like to get into. I like the idea of, although I pray it never happens, and I don't think it's likely, if our trade system that we have that's so robust actually does go down, and we have the inability to get food from a marketplace, at least have the skills involved. That's why I've never gone big game hunting where I held the tag. I've been with friends to like help them. But
speaking of, I brought some venison sausage for us for this weekend. Yes,
I did too.
Yes,
from my good buddy Brendan. It's probably the best venison. It's like the thick, dry sausage. It's so good. It's like spicy. I think it's what's called Rust up in New Braunfels. Shout out to Rust.
Okay.
I'm not a big venison fan, and I crave those.
Venison, it just has to be done correctly.
I think that's what it comes down to.
Yeah. And there's a lot of wrong ways to have venison. I love it.
Like the steaks I've had have been from like really old bucks, and apparently just if you grow up on that taste, all my friends, they're like, no, this tastes great, but if you don't, it's very foreign to your palate.
No, for sure. And so like I have a bunch of ground venison at the house, and I had it mixed with like 10% bacon fat. So
that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, well, I just said everybody likes different things. I like bacon, and so I mean, if I got 30-40 pounds of ground meat, like, yeah, I'd love for it to all taste like bacon. So I'm sure it's not good for me, but it's better for me than anything you buy at the store.
I don't think bacon grease is bad for you.
No.
I think that we were taught that
not like mainline
saturated fats are killing us, and now we're finding out that it's the opposite.
It's sugar.
Exactly.
And I'm from Sugarland. It's practically, it's like
your people murdered us.
It's like the new Winston-Salem. Like, I'm from Sugarland. Like, no, it's that's the new tobacco, right? Everybody hates it.
Yeah,
it's so funny.
Yeah, and it's not bad. Again, I have actual hard candy in my house. We got Twix in our home. We got that hard black tar candy, and I let my kids do Halloween, and they overeat. But we talk about it ahead of time. I'm like, just pay attention to your body when you eat all this. What's it doing to you? They're like, yeah, I think I've had too much for today. And that was one of the best days of my life when my daughter, who has the biggest sweet tooth, said, I think I've had enough candy for the day. I'm like, nailed it, Jace.
Nice.
Nailed it.
No, it was, as a kid, So we were walking distance to the sugar factory in town. Like that was our field trip from elementary school. We'd walk there. I'm not joking. This is not hyperbole. Like we would. And then they'd give you these little hats and then spoonfuls of sugar and then you'd walk back to school.
I'd love to have a podcast about that. And I don't know enough about it, but the little I do know, apparently some sugar companies, and I don't know if I'm not going to name names or whether it's a Texas company or not, but they paid off some Harvard scientists.
Yeah, to lie.
Scientists flat out just faked their report, and that caused, I mean, probably in the billions of dollars worth of medical expenses for a nation.
But it also it killed the market for butter. And because of that, we had margarine.
Butter
because saturated fats. Because it's saturated fats.
And then we find out margarine's shitty for us.
And margarine's way worse for us, right? It's
we miss those totes though. We don't have like the free Tupperwares anymore. That's the downside of going away from margarine.
Right.
Always having the leftovers in
I can't believe it's not cholesterol.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, sugar's funny.
So do you know if the sugar company that was there in Sugarland was part of that, or is that somewhere else?
They're not there anymore. They shut down. They've been for the past like 8 years. They've been trying to turn it into loft apartments and like shops and stuff like that. They put in a children's museum, but like it's still like an empty building.
It's a big old warehouse.
Oh yeah, they're huge. And so there used to be 2 other buildings there too. And they demoed them, so they're gonna blow them up. And so we went. Me and Sophia went.
Ooh, that'd be cool.
Oh man, so we showed up. It's like 6 a.m. It's kind of like cold. Oh yeah, here's the sugar factory right there. And so then there's these 2 other buildings that were next to it, and they're gonna blow these 2 buildings up. That building's still standing. Okay,
the Imperial Sugar Building.
Yeah, that's still there.
Pure cane Imperial Sugar.
Yeah, it was delicious.
I was gonna ask what it was from beech or cane, but I guess
it's sugar cane. And so in fact. It used to be sugarcane fields all around there. Yeah, you want to go on a little history tour with me?
Oh, hell yeah, let's do it.
Great. So I love Texas history. I'm from Texas. I absolutely love Texas, okay? And so during Texas independence from Mexico, we had a problem here in San Antonio, right? Whatchamacallit? What's his face?
Crockett?
No, well, everybody died at the Alamo, right? And then Santa Anna, his entire army, started sweeping eastward. And so they headed through what is now Sugarland on their way to San Jacinto. So there's a small little white bridge right next to this sugar factory, a tiny little white bridge where Santa Anna and his troops marched across on their way to San Jacinto. And when they got to San Jacinto, before the Texans beat them in the fastest battle in the history of mankind, before that battle happens, Santa Anna told his men, if something happens and we have to flee back to Mexico, burn all the sugarcane fields on your way back, because he knew it was our biggest cash crop. All right, as far as this part of Texas, and since if they're going to run back to Mexico, burn all the fields on your way. So his troops knew this. So they get to San Jacinto, and during their siesta, yeah, that's the bridge. I walk across it all the time. That's it. It's still there. Yeah. So, as we know, the Texans attacked the Mexican army during their siesta, and we overran it in 8 minutes? Was it 8 or 12? 8 or 12 minutes. I don't remember. It was ridiculously fast. We overran their entire army, took them down. A few of them got away, and as they were running back, they were supposed to burn the fields in Sugarland, but they burnt the fields in a place called Stafford, which is 10 miles down the road. The wrong fields. Kept going. They left Mexico. And because of that, the biggest competitor to the sugar company in Sugarland, Imperial Sugar, their biggest competitor, got taken off the map overnight by the Mexican army. And
the one in Stafford?
Yeah. Allowed Sugarland and Imperial Sugar to become one of the largest sugar companies in the United States.
Wow.
Well, it was obviously in the Republic of Texas at the time. Yeah.
Great history. In fact, most people I know from Texas all hailed from around that area. So it's a special place in my heart.
You ready for something crazy?
Let's hear it.
The Roman Empire and the Republic of Texas were only separated by 30 years.
Wait, what?
Yeah, I'll put that in your pipe and smoke it. I just found that out. I was like, I'm remembering this. I'm going to bring it up on the podcast later this week. I saw that. I was like, that can't be true. Yeah.
Oh, man.
By 30 years. When did the Roman... Or was it the Roman Empire? Yeah, yeah.
What year was that?
Roman Empire? That can't be right.
I don't
What
know.
empire was it? No, what was it? It was a different empire.
That's why we got a fact checker.
Yeah,
now.
find out which empire it was. Which empire? Is it
Maybe the Ottoman Empire?
It definitely wasn't the Roman Empire.
I'm trying to get
Maybe it was the Roman Empire.
someone from Turkey on the show.
Well, because like there's a fall of Rome,
Because
but like the official Roman Empire.
Ottoman took over after. Man, I wish I knew.
No, not the Mexican-American War. We're way off on this tangent.
Anyways,
I think it is the
we're
Roman
all over the
Empire.
place. Is the when did the Roman Empire get
End.
toppled? End, and then look at the Ottoman too.
It couldn't have been the Ottoman. I would remember.
Wait,
that.
what's
I like
Hungary?
comfy feet.
What's that
No,
empire?
It's 476, so we're way off. It had to have been something else.
Yeah, it had to be something else.
It wasn't Austro-Hungarian.
I mean, Ottoman was pretty freaking recent, wasn't it?
No idea.
When was that? 1922.
1922.
Oh, no.
When was the Texas?
1860.
1860. Oh, so Ottoman Empire was at the same time as the Texas.
Yeah. 1830? Okay. Yeah, 1860. We were getting close to the Civil War by then.
Now I got to know. If you're listening to this and you're
we're gonna
welcome on the show because we need you here.
Just check in the liner notes. We'll find it and we'll put it together. Oh man. Yeah, no, it's crazy. No, I love Texas history. It's wild.
Well, one thing that we were talking about earlier that just to circle back around a little bit, I brought up psychedelics on earlier in the show, and that seems to be a common theme in a lot of my episodes because I think there's an untapped potential.
Can I ask a question on that? So do you think it's an untapped potential of the human mind, or do you think it's an untapped potential of a available medicine, or both?
Yes.
Agreed.
Yes. I think we have a stigma surrounding things that we don't understand, and that's just in general. And until we have better information, there's always going to be bad information around it. And now that we have some very reputable places, Mayo Clinic being one of the more notable ones, doing some research right now about late stage life cancer patients, people in general with trauma.
Have you read some of the I'll say testimonials of people that are in end of life care?
We really should get some of those up on
and
the
then
screen.
like
read
they're
through
talking about the amount of peace that they have and appreciation for what they've experienced. Not a fear, not the unknown, a very calm demeanor about them, which and I'm not that calm of a guy. Like I can pretend to be, but I'm not, right? I'm fucking enthusiastic. But to hear these people and how they now view heading into this afterlife, it's very fascinating to me because it shows you that it does something to your psyche, right? Which it makes you not only appreciate what you've experienced already, it makes you optimistic about what's going to happen in the future. And I love that. I think there's a huge potential. I mean, having lots of friends that are veterans that have had PTSD, I know for a fact that psychedelics have been instrumental in helping them deal with a lot of the trauma, both physically and psychologically, that they dealt with. And I think that it is an untapped medicine that has been, I don't know, it was called bad, like these words, and shoved into a closet. And we were told, no, don't even go look at those. Those are really bad. Instead, come over here to our government sanctioned drugs and take something from this pool because we're making money on it. And it's a shame because I think a lot of people who could have had not very necessarily better lives, but at least a more fulfilled life, or one with more peace in it, I think that we have done them a disservice.
Absolutely. I'm happy to hear you say that because I don't think that we can say it enough that there are people that don't feel that way. And if there was a vote put up to even not to legalize, but to take them off at Schedule 1 to where they could be more studied, I think there are people who strongly feel because of the lens that they have, and I can't blame them because they're being they're not being hypocrites. They're being honest. That's just who they are. That's how they see the world. They would vote against it. And that's why I almost ad nauseum, I constantly bring it up, because it's something that, and it's probably because my lens was that way. Okay. I thought there was zero instance to where acid was a good thing. Just saying that out loud, just from, even though I know it is now in the right dose set setting, but even saying that out loud kind of feels weird.
No, absolutely. It's been so stigmatized. Here's the deal. The only people that think that psychedelics are bad are those that have never experienced psychedelics. Period.
With some exceptions of people.
Hold on. There's been a few.
And here's the exception is if you don't know what you're doing. And that's why, well, if you don't have the right dose, then you might not have a great experience. And if you carry a lot of baggage, like we're talking about, and because here's the thing, reality, that's just assumed. Some people could argue this, but let's assume there is a definite reality. Like, this is what this universe is.
We'll call this a shared reality. Sure.
Right?
I'm in.
And the farther we are from the truth in our original lens, our default mode network, my little theory, and this is just coming from my pea brain, is that the harder those psychedelics are to your psyche, you have a very uncomfortable experience. Let's call it coming to Jesus.
You're fighting the ego.
Yeah. You are being hit with, oh my God, what I can't think this way. That's not what I was told. Everything's wrong. And then you realize, oh, maybe everything was wrong. And I'm starting to actually see the truth. I love using scripture because it connects to different types of people, but one of those is what is it? And I'm paraphrasing here, but it's the wicked find the truth to be hard.
Yeah, I like it. We are misquoting a lot, but there's such good quotes. It's okay.
The concept's what matters.
That's true. Did you read Sacred Mushroom and the Cross?
I'm about halfway through right now.
Yeah, I'm about halfway through it too.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Dude, that is some heavy stuff.
It's too heavy, man.
Have you read The Immortality Key?
No.
Much smoother read. That's, well, Sacred Mushroom and the Cross, what is it, John Allegro? I think he wrote it in the 50s, maybe.
Yeah, and it's. I'm going to be honest, man.
It's a little dated, but I would recommend, because even for me, who I love linguistics, or at least I thought I did, until I started reading this book and realized Allegro is a fucking genius when it comes to linguistics. And although there is some like legitimate argument that some of his ideas were not quite on point, like he takes one language and brings it through a bunch of different other languages and claims with authority.
Got a few stretch moves in there.
Yeah,
I've got to admit, like he makes a few leaps.
Exactly.
Right?
And he says it with a surety. It's not, I posit, it's this is what it means. And I'm like, okay, when you know language, you understand that one word in a different language means many, right? And it can mean many different things. And anyone who speaks English, anyone who speaks any language knows that one word is going to have multiple meanings. But the one that's a little bit easier to read is The Immortality Key. I think that,
writing that down.
It's still a little bit, into the linguistics and the history of it, but it's much easier to follow. And just the way that he explains why he started writing this, and it was in the realm of what John Marco Allegro is doing on a linguistic basis, but it ended up turning into something completely different. He realized that with new technologies, we're able to actually get objective data about the urns and the clay pots that we were
they were
holding.
finding ergot, and the actual chalices they were using for communion in Portuguese masses. Like they found ergot. So people came to get the Holy Spirit, and then they walk away with this we'll call it some amazing feeling, right? Maybe some introspection, maybe some questioning of my own personal motives and how I might be a better human being. And then I might need to go back to church this week to go have, a little dose of Christ. And I love that concept because people can reach enlightenment in a lot of different ways, right? They can reach it through meditation, even some psychotherapy. They can do it through, a myriad of things. You can do it through psychedelics, and I
do
think
it through church.
I do exactly. That's what. Yeah,
through prayer.
Absolutely through prayer. I mean, and I love prayer. Right. I'm not a religious type, but I love it because it's a form of meditation that forces a self-awareness that a lot of people don't do, and so I think that there's a lot of ways in which we can reach this enlightenment, right? To understand that it is a collective, that it is all of us as humans together in one common goal, right? To continue life and to make it better for others. And if we're all striving for that, then I mean, it's all nuances after that.
It's fun to make parallels. I used to break up bread and bless it and pass it around the congregation. I was a priest. I was an elder in my church. I held many roles, which isn't anything special in the Mormon church. Every kid is. So it's just like, hey, here you go. You're 16 now. You're now a priest. And you have to accept it and do it. At that age, it's not like they're forcing you on anything. Some people chose not to. I did. I was all in until I was early mid-20s, and when you go back down the history of where that ordinance came from, and you start delving into the different language, the different words, and where these things came from, you start having these aha moments. And we would teach that, in order to see God, you must be reborn, right? Baptism is the Christian way to talk about it. And how do you do that? You're laid down in the water, and then you come back up a new person. You die and you come back.
A spiritual awakening.
Exactly. And at that point, then you're saved. You have this immortal nature now where you have this communion with God. Religion is just a word that means do it again, and reconnect, I guess, is a good way to.
Well, and does religion come from legion, like as in recommitting yourself to the legion of Christ, or a legion of
not legion in the sense of like a group of people, but I think it's connected. So ligar is is to connect.
Okay.
And in Portuguese, it makes way more sense because religar is reconnect with something, and so religion is just how us the mortals reconnect with God. And like even the atonement and at-one-ment, it's to become one again with God. We're going back to enthusiasm here.
Man, we're digging really close to it.
But when you hear all these things growing up, and you're told you got to get baptized and you got to take the sacrament, the blood and flesh of Christ. And then you delve into the psychedelic realm and make these parallels that are so uncannily similar, but with a meaning that actually makes sense. It's almost like, how did we miss this?
Right. The canonism, right? The actual cadence within these religions, right? Within these structures. And if you go back, right, the earliest, we'll say Christian religion, right? It was, what is catechism today. But all of their ceremonies, if you were just to go watch it, okay, this is a little weird, but okay, I get it. But the second you add an idea of, okay, if you were actually providing somebody with that atonement, right, that re-one-ment with the Lord and with all other human beings, if you're providing them with that experience, right, that enlightenment, right, that brings them back, it makes so much sense if you add a psychedelic in there. All of a sudden, like, wait, hold on. The priests were serving ergot. I get it now. Oh.
Wait,
now
we're
it
going to
makes sense.
sit there and all sing together in a room, a hot, sweaty room for
Well, the problem
hours.
Here's the problem. They probably should have done, the communion at the beginning of the Mass. And that way, by the end of Mass, it's like you're peaking. And
that's one fun part about the immortality key. He goes into early Christianity and what their different, how they gathered together was different than how we do it now. Mm-hmm. Right now, it's out in the open, right? So, the basic history is, what was it, like 300 or 400 after Christ? Constantinople adopted Christianity. That's what turned, the Ottoman Empire has, what is it, Turkey? What's the big city in Turkey now? Dang it.
Istanbul.
Used to be called
Constantinople.
It's the same city, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a great song about it.
Oh, okay.
Have you not heard
No.
Istanbul, not Constantinople?
Oh, no, I haven't.
Oh my goodness.
Who sings it?
So, well, the ones my kid listened to, I first heard it on Animaniacs as a kid. But it was by They Might Be Giants.
Good.
The Four Lads is the original guys. Yeah, it was Istanbul, now not Constantinople. So if you've got a date.
Istanbul was Constantinople.
Yeah.
Now it's
So if
Istanbul.
you've got a date.
Okay.
In Constantinople, she'll be waiting in Istanbul. Like, it's a ridiculous song.
I don't even know what that means. I'm still wrapping my head around it.
Well, because they changed like the name overnight, right? It was like a really quick change. It was
Just-
Istanbul, not Constantinople.
What year did that happen? That's pretty
No
recent,
idea.
isn't it?
What year?
Let's see here. Isn't when the former Roman city was captured?
1453?
So it wasn't when the Roman city was captured. Oh, there we go. 1930. Here we go. Istanbul used to be Constantinople,
Yeah.
and that was the center of. So Constantine was the big dude at the time. He was sick and tired of fighting against these Christians, and that's when he adopted it. And that's the beginning of the Catholic Church, right? And so 300-400 years after Christ was already gone, this little cult Christianity that wouldn't go away. People were super adamant that they needed to follow their beliefs because
Constantinople was
right.
Orthodox, the Orthodox.
But that's where it all kind of began, right? And we've had splits from there, right?
I mean, the Italians copy everything the Greeks do, right?
I don't know about that. I do know that we have this very altered idea of what early Christianity was, and the Immortality Key would talk about in those early years. They thought it was because they were just hiding from the Roman Empire, and probably that is true as well. But they would get into small gatherings and have these sacraments, have these ordinances where there was a cup that was involved. They would put some stuff in it, ergot being the precursor or a similar natural version of LSD or acid.
Mm-hmm.
But there were other items in there too. You know, there is evidence of marijuana, you know, cannabis. There's evidence of other nightshade plants that have a psychedelic effect.
All kinds of
and
stuff.
it's kind of like a cocktail.
It was happening behind closed doors, right? And it wasn't done in these big open masses. So how do you do something like that on a much bigger scale? I think you've got to homogenize it for the masses. Okay, well, I think everybody go, okay, the kid can have a small drink of wine, you know, at church, and he could get a cracker. You know, I think it's easier to do it, but if this is true, right, which I think it might be, right, especially if you look at a lot of the Gnostic stuff, right, the Gnostic gospel is pretty fascinating. The stuff they found with the Dead Sea Scrolls also fascinating. I do think that psychedelics had a much bigger part in religion than we actually give it credit for. But by removing it, right, because it's taboo, it's looked down upon, it's illegal in most places in the United States. But by removing that, aren't you removing an essential element, right, to that reconnection, to that oneness, right, the atonement, right, to being part of a collective, right, where we all do care about one another, we all do want others to succeed, and we know that our actions have an impact on other people. It gets big. It gets scary when you start thinking about that. Are there a lot of people missing out on these experiences where they could realize that they actually matter?
Earlier, I mentioned that as I learned things, I look back on past actions and, you know, carry that with me. You know, at the time I didn't know, and now I do. A big part of that I would say is due to psychedelics, because it gives you an insight where, you know, it allows you to look in that backpack and you realize, okay, so if this is not, you know, the correct lens that I want to live, if this isn't the lens that's going to make this world a better place, I need to change it. I have that responsibility. And that's when you have to admit, oh shit, I've been wrong. And I think that's probably why it's one of the reasons it's been stigmatized and why it's illegal. Because imagine being the guy on top and you have this structure that's been built around all these different countries that are currently in power right now, and you don't want to be shown that, oh shit, I've been doing it wrong this whole time?
I think it is to the detriment of humanity that these things are illegal. I think that it is beneficial. Do I want people out there doing it all the time? No. Do I want my kids touching them right now? No. But I think that an adult who is consenting, that wants to have an experience that could be better off because of it, should absolutely do it. There's no reason not to. It's a plant. You're making a plant legal like that. No, it's ridiculous. It's nonsensical, right? And then we know there's stuff that's way worse than any of these legal plants or funguses or whatever. There's way worse things out there that are actually being prescribed by doctors to individuals, right? Like the whole opioid epidemic, which we, jumped and talked about earlier. It's crazy. It's great. Those things are horrible. They've destroyed people's lives, right? It absolutely destroyed people. The only people's lives I've known that have been destroyed by like psychedelics is because they got caught with them and they got charged. Right?
Isn't that fucked up?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
But as opposed to people that are literally addicted to legal heroin, like on the streets, like just gone because of this. It's sad and it's a shame. And I think that we ran too far in the wrong direction.
Well, I think it's important to note that these people who, through illegal means, their doctor prescribing this opioid to them, abused it, not by their fault, but
by the nature of the actual substance. And there are moments I'm sure people actually do need that strength of the pain. Like I've had surgery before, right? I blew an ACL before. Like I get it. Like there's times you're like, this pain is rough, right? Mm-hmm.
But it was the drug company in this, and specifically with the what was it, Purdue?
Yeah,
it's because they fibbed. They did what these sugar companies did. They had experts
like
with quote companies. Marks saying, "Hey, no, you just double the dose. You double the dose. Double the dose." We've always known that you don't do that with opioids, but then they got the FDA to throw a little phrase in there to convince a bunch of doctors to allow them to continue to double the dose because they thought it was safe, right?
Well, and therein lies the problem. I think maybe we trusted these companies for too long, right? Doctors for a long time. I mean, it's do no harm. Ask the questions, be curious about it. And there were some great doctors in it. I mean, well, heck, I only watched one of the documentaries and then one of the dramatizations of it. But I mean, there were some people that did push back. But a lot of the people, I mean, at the end of the day, who's culpable? The salesmen that worked for those companies that were lied to by their bosses about how good it was and how it was necessary. No, you can't blame them, right? They didn't know, right? They're young people. They're in it for money. At first, I'm sure a lot of them did find out. Can you blame the person that got them prescribed and then now becomes addicted? Of course not. Can you blame the doctor, right? The physician who was told, no, these are going to help your patients. I mean, maybe there's a case to be made there, but at the end of the day, they're just trying to bring relief to their patients and they didn't know what was being pushed on them. And so it was a real nasty turn of events.
And going back to the Abraham Lincoln quote that may not have been an Abraham Lincoln quote and I butchered, it's stand with those who are right and part ways when they cease to be so. Are those salesmen culpable? When they found out, did they continue to sell? Are those doctors culpable? When they found out, did they continue to push it? I think we have enough evidence now to show that Purdue Pharma was culpable because they did know and they chose to look the other way, or maybe they were just really good at lying to themselves. But the fact that the way to get out of that addiction to opioids is or can be psychedelics. Oh, we found it. Stand with anyone that is right. Stand with him while he is right. And part with him when he goes wrong. Hell yeah.
Hey, that was really close. Quote. That's you were like a 8 out of 10.
Not too shabby. I'll take an 8. Mine. I'll take an 8, baby. But so Casey Mitchell, finally remembered her name. She was so important in my journey of trying to like destigmatize it for myself. Casey Mitchell is an integrator of psychedelics. She was part of the Psychedelic Society up in, I want to say, Oregon.
Does she approach it shamanistically or medically?
I think she's more on the medical side, but I think she's got a little woo-woo, as they say. I don't know. I need to go back. We probably talked about it, but she's a big fan of DMT because it's, they call it the spirit molecule. It's a little bit more potent, short-lived, but she showed me or told me an experience when she was I can't remember if it was her apartment or just her friend's apartment, would allow some addicts to come stay there on their way down to, I want to say Tijuana, to get some Ibogaine treatment. Ibogaine, partially with DMT. You do like Ibogaine the first day and then DMT the next day, or some
I hear it's
combination.
amazing to get people off of addictions. I hear it's absolutely unbelievable.
Exactly what she said. She saw them right before they went down, and then they'd come back through, and she would be able to, multiple people would see the before and after. And that's why she decided to dedicate her life to that cause, because the just black and white difference from that person that's had that experience. And, we're talking about these people who are on the deathbeds that the Mayo Clinic's working with. I think it's very important to note, especially if you're listening to this and you do have a stigma against it, it's not the drug that is changing you. The drug is allowing you to see a part of, whether it's yourself, whether it's the world around you in a different lens. And I think it's a little bit of both, and maybe it's all connected, but the experience, that's the thing that's actually having the effect. And I kind of put all substances in those two categories. There's substances that the experience is the effect, and then there's other ones that the actual drug itself, that makes this experience. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I've used alcohol and marijuana as the poster children of this concept. Alcohol, you drink today and you're going to pay for it tomorrow. Marijuana, you pay for it now and you feel great tomorrow. and I think that when we speak about different substances, we can't lie to ourselves about the potential harms.
That's just as bad as lying about the fake harms. Right?
Yeah, exactly. We need to be honest with ourselves both ways. If we just say bad, then all of a sudden we're creating this vacuum that's going to be filled up with something else. And so I think, honestly, the most responsible thing pastors and teachers and everyone can do is educate yourselves about these substances that are causing a huge amount of harm to our societies. And then educate yourselves about these substances that you think are causing harm, but are actually helping us from the harm that you originally stigmatized. And if you aren't at least trying these things for yourself, I truly feel that's not enthusiastic. And I think that you're doing a disservice to what your true intentions are, because there are so many good people who get up on a podium today and try to help those around them. And I think it's really hard to change your initial lens, your initial default mode network. And you're doing a disservice to everyone around you if you don't at least experience it and see, hey, where have I been wrong in the past? Where have I been misguided? And just deal with the guilt, and maybe do a little bit more psychedelics and get that weight out of your backpack. And honestly, I think that's going to move the dial of moving humanity to a place where we all want to be faster than anything else that I think we can be focusing on. It's just such a low hanging fruit.
Well, it's a race to enlightenment, not a race to the best technology. And if I was to go, I'll go back. We'll go academic for a second. There's a really neat book called The Happiness Hypothesis, and it was really thick, but I got through it. I forced myself to get through it. It's a good book, but they looked at people who went through crazy moments in their lives, and they gauged a baseline happiness for these individuals. So a person that's normal happy, right? Just pick whatever level they're on. And then they observed something great happening. So like they got married, or they won the lottery, or something like that. And they'd watch how these people's happiness would jump up for a very short-lived amount of time. And then it would return back to its baseline level, no matter what happened in between. Like they would return to their baseline, right? Their normal modes of operation. And there's other people, right, that had a certain level of happiness, and they went through a traumatic event. So a car crash, a loss of a friend, a loss of a limb. They studied quite a few people that were amputees. And you watch these people and they would dip down way below, and they would be able to rebound more quickly than the people that, they rebound just as quickly as the people that had something great happen to them, to their normal standard of living. But what the guy surmises is that he calls it an elephant that we ride that's swimming that we don't really control, right? Our id, right? And we're the ego on top of it. But what he surmises is that we can take steps to change our baseline, right? But it starts with it needs to be heavily introspection, right? A self-assessment, an honest self-assessment, right? And once again, it can happen through all the different ways, whether it's religion or whether it's psychotherapy or whether it's psychedelics or whether it's meditation. But I think all of those things can be good for the individual because it can help us not only raise our baseline, but then, be a positive piece of momentum, right, in the universe.
I can't think of a better way to end the show. We got some cute kids waiting for us. Yeah. We have covered some ground that I was not expecting to cover, but I hope that when we send all this out into the ether, at least a single person is able to decide, hey, I actually do have a little bit more power in my own life and can actually positively affect other people and just stop being a passenger and, try to drive, try to move the dial, try to reach out to people around you, because those who are loneliest are the ones who don't reach out.
That's true. Well, stay well and stay awesome, my friend.
I can't thank you enough, man. It's been a pleasure. What's the name of your book and when it's coming out?
The new book is called Purpose or Perish, and it should be available at the beginning of June.
Thank you, Josh. See you all around.
I am Woodstock.